Just for the record, I can barely ride this thing by myself. There's no way I would get on here with a baby. Hey, baby. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Break It Yourself. Today, we are reviewing the pros and cons of the Onewheel Pint X. And the first pro is that this thing is incredibly fun. I had no experience with Onewheel before this. I have had an electric skateboard and I've ridden electric scooters, but this thing is just purely fun to ride. It's awesome, I have to say. But that doesn't mean that it's all pros. There definitely are some cons, but we're gonna focus on the pros first. And the first pro is that this thing has awesome range. Of course, it depends on how much you weigh, if you're going uphill, downhill, and how fast you're going. And additionally, the weather even can play a factor as well. Batteries don't do well in extreme cold, and so all those things are gonna play into it. Generally, you can expect 12 to 18 miles, which is just amazing, I think, for a little electric vehicle that can get you around. The fact that you can speed around 12 to 18 miles is awesome. The other thing is the top speed. The top speed of this thing is 18 miles an hour, which is insanely fast. I've had it for, I think, 2 months, maybe 3 months now, and I'm not even confident enough to get it to 18 miles an hour. I've hit 16, and right now that was absolutely plenty for me, but you can get all the way up to 18 miles an hour. Another pro is that you don't need any remote. You don't have to hold on to anything. You are solely controlling the board based on your body. So electric skateboards, when that was kind of a thing, they usually would have a remote that you'd have to hold on to. It was just something else to remember that could break, and also that you had to keep charged. So I think this is a great pro. There's none of that. You just control it by leaning forward or leaning backwards. Lean that way and it'll go that way.
Oh, all right.
You still had pressure on this front pad,
Yeah.
and you jumped off with your left foot. So it thinks you're still trying to ride. So that's why the motor was still engaged, which is why I'm saying when you need to bail, get both feet off. The other pro, and I'm kind of comparing this generally to electric skateboards as well as electric scooters. That's kind of what I think about when I think about this Onewheel, when I'm comparing capabilities and stuff. That's what I'm thinking about in my mind, because when I've been interested in electric transportation to get around, generally it's been, hey, what kind of skateboard do they have out there, or maybe a scooter. I'm not gonna compare this to a bike because that's not a fair comparison at all. One awesome thing about the Onewheel is that the one wheel is actually very large, so it makes going over bumps and cracks and things like that much easier than if you had a skateboard. Now, pro of the skateboard is that it has 4 wheels and this one has 1. So bumps can be terrifying on this thing, but it does handle them very well because of that large wheel. Continuing in the comparison with a skateboard and a scooter, the Onewheel Pint X is incredibly nimble. You can slow down and just carve around things if you need to. When I had an electric skateboard, that was one of the things that I always kind of had to think about, was in my, the turning radius wasn't very good, and it just was an issue in tight spaces. So this Pint X is great in tight spaces. Another pro is that you can use the app to select different riding modes. So they have one for beginner. It'll top you out at 12 miles an hour, which is awesome when starting. And then they have a couple others that you can try out for different styles of riding. So I think that's a huge pro. They actually give you that ability. You don't just get on and like, hey, full speed. They have a beginner mode for you, which is great. Also, another pro is the app. The app, at least for me, has handled incredibly well. Like no crashes or any issues like that. Everything just works. And that's what I want in an app. But I've had so many cases where I buy some product that comes with an app and the app is total garbage. So Onewheel did an awesome job with the app as well. Another pro, even though this costs extra, is that they offer accessories to protect the Onewheel itself. looking at the Onewheel before I got it, I was just thinking like, man, that thing seems prone to, one side always has to be touching the ground. That side's gonna get scratched up. You can replace almost all the parts on this thing, and they also have protective parts as well. So I think that is a huge pro for protecting what you're actually buying from getting scratched up or anything like that. I highly recommend the rail guards to protect the side rails, because naked rails, they're just metal, and if you scratch those, it's there permanently. So if you get the rail guards, they're 25 bucks. They're plastic. They're at least gonna protect that rail. And I'll say it again, this thing is a ton of fun to ride. It just makes you want to ride it. Even if you don't have anywhere to go with it, I just see it sitting there and I'm like, man, I wanna go outside and ride this thing. Ton of fun. I cannot reiterate that enough. Another pro, I'm gonna touch on the wheel again, is that you're not restricted to riding on a street or a sidewalk. You don't necessarily always have to be on pavement, which is pretty cool. I'm not good enough to ride it off-road. There definitely are people, and they kind of suggest that you get the GT, which is their other version, which is more expensive, larger, faster, bigger battery, all that stuff, if you really want to focus on like trail riding or off-road. But just know that this thing can go off of the pavement, which is really cool. For a scooter or a skateboard, you're definitely pinned in to just riding on pavement. All right, now let's get to the cons. It can't all be good, and the number one con of this thing is it's insanely expensive. It is $1,400 at the time of filming for this Pint X, which is just a ton of money. There's no way around it. They do have sales occasionally on accessories and stuff, so you can bundle it together, but you're really not gonna get it for cheaper than that. You could look into the regular Pint, which has gone down in price. It has a lower top speed and it has lower range. So keep those things in mind. I think there are some other small differences, but this is for the Pint X. The cost is just very high. $1,400 is really expensive. Another con, and this is definitely gonna vary from person to person, and this is just a con for me, is that it was hard to learn to ride. That was a big concern that I had, especially as someone who, I'm not like a young teenager that's gonna get this thing and be able to ride it and practice on it after school or in the summertime. I've got a little bit of time after work and maybe some time on the weekends, and I have gotten much better at it, but it took me a fair amount of time. Maybe I'm just horrible at it, which definitely could be the case. Maybe I have bad balance. I really don't know. I seem to do pretty well on the skateboard that I have, and generally am like average when it comes to athleticism, I think, and it's hard to ride. Also, it's a bit scary. You have one wheel, and if you catch that nose of the board, you're going forward. That is something that's kind of hung in the back of my mind, the safety of this thing. I haven't had any bad crashes, and I've, had it for a few months now, but it's always kind of in the back of my head when I'm riding, like, what if something went wrong? It is a little scary, and it is hard to ride for me. I've gotten much better, but I'm still not confident at those higher speeds. So I kind of cruise between 10 and 12 miles an hour, and right now that's perfect for me. Like I said, I've pushed it to 15, 16. I definitely didn't feel safe. Maybe you will. Onewheel has all these videos that they show of like young kids unboxing it, hopping on and just shredding. And it's like, that definitely wasn't the case for me. It was a very steep learning curve for me. So keep that in mind. Another con is that it's not waterproof. Now, Onewheel says that, you can get it a little wet. For the cost, I would have wanted this thing to be 100% waterproof, so that if I'm riding to work or something and then it rains on me on the way home, the forecast changes or something, like, I would have liked to have this thing be waterproof. I'm a little disappointed that it's not. If you read on some forums, take this with a grain of salt. This does not mean that it actually is waterproof. There's people that do all kinds of things with their Onewheels and get them wet and say they have no issues. I would definitely not do that, especially for the cost and because it's going to void your warranty. but it's not waterproof, which is a bummer. Now, this is a little nitpicky, but going back to the app, you can select your profile for how you want the board to respond, and it's not 100% customizable. They really only give you, I believe, 4 different profiles to choose from. And hey, for most people, that's probably enough. I would have just liked for the cost to be able to customize, every parameter on the board. I would love to see that. So that's a con for me as well. And I just want to reiterate, I'm not sure if I'll ever feel 100% confident on this thing. It does seem that at some point I will take some type of fall. And maybe that's true for other things. I never felt unsafe on a skateboard or on a scooter. And this thing just, I don't know. I'm still not 100% confident. Maybe it's because I've also watched a bunch of YouTube videos and it seems like everyone that has reviewed them, eventually they get comfortable enough and then they have a big fall. And I don't know if that's inevitable. I definitely don't want that to happen. It does seem like if something were to go wrong, you could catch the front of that board. Other companies that make accessories for the Onewheel, and there is one that I've looked into that adds little wheels on the front. So if it were to die or if something were to happen and you were to slam that front down on the pavement, those little wheels would make sure that they roll and you could keep rolling instead of flipping off. But I'm just gonna say it. It is still a little scary to ride, so I'm probably gonna take it slow and won't ever go to crazy speeds on it. But it kind of does feel inevitable that at some point you're gonna flip off, and that is a little unsettling. I hope these pros and cons help inform you on your decision if you're interested in the Onewheel Pint X. Again, I am a big fan, but just remember all the things that I said. I cannot decide for you. If you got the change and you want this thing, absolutely go out and grab it. I'll link to the accessories that I got down below. I definitely recommend them, especially because as you learn, you're going to nick the board up like crazy. At least I did. So I wish I would have not put my fender on until after I had gotten way more comfortable on it, because when I was first starting out, I immediately flipped it over, scratched the fender, and I was like, dang it. So take the fender off if you're gonna get one. I think to start, make sure you have those rail guards on and just go for it. It's a ton of fun. Thank you so much for watching Break It Yourself. As always, don't forget to thumbs me up, and we will see you next time.